Okay, we've all been there, right? You sit down to tell this deeply personal story, and your very first instinct is to just start at the absolute beginning and plow straight through. But what if you approached it differently? What if instead of just recounting events, you treated yourself as an architect? Welcome to today's Explainer. We are moving way beyond just reciting mere events. We're going to look at the underlying blueprints that actually build a story's true emotional impact.
Because here's the thing, a personal narrative isn't just a record of what happened to you, it's really about how you organize it. Think of narrative structure like, well, the floor plan of a house. The raw materials of your life, the messy breakups, the huge career wins, those quiet little realizations, those are just the bricks in the wood. Your narrative structure, that's the blueprint that dictates exactly how a guest walks through those rooms. Do you trap them in this claustrophobic hallway of suspense, or do you lead them into a bright, open sunroom of quiet reflection? The layout is literally everything.
So, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to establish what a story blueprint actually is, explore how to bend time to your will, dive into the emotional core of memory, look at a cinematic scene-based approach, and finally, wrap up by learning how to mix these blueprints together like a master builder. Okay, section 1, the blueprint of a story, beyond what happened. Let's get right into how the specific framework you choose ultimately governs exactly what your reader feels. Which brings us to section 2, playing with time, the foundational structures. Now, time is usually the very first tool we reach for, right? The chronological structure is our absolute baseline. It moves step by step from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. You can picture the natural progression of, say, moving away to college, then learning a new skill, and finally, overcoming a major fear. By moving chronologically, you're allowing your reader to learn and grow right alongside you. The cause and effect, it happens in real time. But, and this is a big but for experienced writers, a strict chronological narrative can so easily devolve into this incredibly dry, well, this happened and then this happened kind of list. You really have to intentionally pause that timeline to integrate thoughtful reflection. Otherwise, you completely lose the emotional resonance. But what if you want to bypass that whole warm-up entirely? Well, that's where we use in medias res, which is just fancy Latin for in the middle of things. Instead of starting way back on day 1, you literally drop the readers straight into the deep end of the action, right into the conflict or the fear. You manufacture instant curiosity. This is wildly effective for stories that are centered on sudden trauma or major disruptive life realizations. You strategically withhold the context, which forces the audience to scramble and catch up. To really see how drastically this shifts the mood, consider the difference in delivery between these two approaches. You could write something like, I went to the doctor. Okay, sure, it's chronological, it's safe, but it's also entirely passive. Now, what if instead you begin with, the nurse looked at me silently before lowering the clipboard. Wow. Suddenly, we completely bypass the boring waiting room. We are in the chair, our heart is absolutely racing, and we are emotionally invested from the very first syllable. Moving on to section 3, shaping memory and meaning, the emotional core. So if playing with time is all about momentum, shaping memory is about depth. A reflective or thematic structure isn't driven by the clock, it's driven by interpretation. When you're exploring these massive, heavy themes, things like grief, identity, family, a neat little timeline rarely does it justice. Instead, you organize by emotion. Imagine you're writing about your relationship with your heritage. You might weave in a childhood memory of a specific meal, jump way forward to a feeling of isolation in your 20s, and then connect it all with broad present-day observations. You're creating this beautiful constellation of memories, rather than just drawing a straight line. Let's take a look at the circular structure. This style often kicks off with a super evocative, highly sensory image to really ground the reader. Something like, every Sunday, my grandmother hummed while making coffee. Right away, you establish this comforting, aromatic baseline. From there, you spend the main body of your narrative moving far, far away from that kitchen, perhaps exploring the chaos of growing up, complex family dynamics, or even deep personal loss. And then, you bring them home. Years later, I still hear her humming every time coffee brews in the morning. It is the exact same image. But because of the tumultuous journey we've just been on together, it's now loaded with entirely new meaning. Returning to that opening anchor creates this profound sense of completion. The reader leaves feeling that the emotional loop has been fully, beautifully closed. Then we have the fragmented structure. Let's be real for a second. Human memory rarely unfolds like a perfectly edited movie, right? It's scattered, it's messy. When you're dealing with emotional confusion or sudden loss, a tidy timeline just feels fake.
Fragmenting the narrative, jumping erratically between periods or scattering flashbacks, actually brilliantly mirrors the disorientation of real life. It forces your reader to piece the puzzle together themselves. Now, it does require incredibly strong thematic organization beneath the surface, but when you nail it, it is the most authentic representation of human thought. All right, section 4, the cinematic approach, scene versus summary.
If you want to create a genuinely cinematic feel, you absolutely must know when to stop summarizing and start building a scene. A broad summary tells me middle school was difficult. Okay, intellectually I understand you, but I don't really feel it. Now zoom in. Put me right there in the cafeteria. Describe the deafening echo of the lunchroom, the humiliating stare from a classmate, the exact texture of the flimsy plastic tray in your sweaty hands. Scene-based structures slow the pacing down to an absolute crawl. They immerse the reader so deeply in the dialogue and the sensory details that the emotional intensity just skyrockets.
And that brings us to section 5, mixing your narrative blueprints, the master builder.
You see, the most captivating narratives rarely rely on just one single trick. The best ones are hybrids. You were the master architect here, so you get to mix your blueprints. Imagine opening in media res. You were standing in the pouring rain with a packed suitcase. Boom, instant suspense. Once we are hooked, you shift to a chronological timeline to explain the argument that actually led to this moment. Along the way, you drop in fragmented flashbacks of your childhood to reveal the deep-rooted insecurities driving the conflict. And finally, you end the piece with a circular framing echoing the sound of that rain. You've just layered suspense, linear momentum, and deep reflection, all into one unforgettable piece of writing.
Because at the end of the day, there is no single correct way to structure a personal narrative. The only question that truly matters is, how do you want your audience to feel? Do you want them breathless with suspense or quiet and introspective? Your life experiences are uniquely yours, obviously, but your structure, that dictates whether they remain just your private memories or transform into universal stories that echo in a stranger's mind. So before you sit down to write your next sentence, just pause. Look at your raw materials and ask yourself, what blueprint will you use to bring your story to life?